everybody can hear us okay. If you can't, leave a comment and I will plug in a microphone. But we are talking with John Brasini today. Now, tell me a little bit about yourself, first of all, so everybody knows.
Oh, well, I'm not a Charleston native. I had been here long enough to call this home then.
Okay.
Have grown up in the low country, love the restaurants, the beach scene, the people are friendly, everything is flat. This is just a good place to be.
Everything is flat. We love that, of course. But today's been a pretty busy day in your world, and you're a political analyst.
That's right.
So this is kind of your bread and butter.
That's right.
Talk to me kind of about how the day has gone and some of the things that you've noticed.
Well, interesting to see some of the trends that are developing. Folks that do this for a living often are interested in what the word on the ground is.
Okay.
And the people I've been talking to, for the most part, have said the polls have been relatively smooth. There were a lot of concerns over what type of impact social distancing was going to have and how many folks were going to show up. I think we've had some delays, I've heard, at West Ashley High School. But we want to see who's voting what primaries. And we want to look at what areas they're voting in. Some of those have been almost maybe surprising today.
I was talking to somebody earlier, and the most surprising thing to her was Lindsey Graham today and the absentee voting. Is that abnormal? Was this an interesting?
Oh, Holly, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, okay. We're sort of in an interesting time period. 21,000 absentee ballots were cast in Charleston County alone. That's both in person and in mail. We may exceed that when the final numbers are tabulated, but I mean that's about where we were. If you look at the numbers even just 2 years ago, they were 3,000 ballots. So kidding? 7 times the volume actually has come in basically with absentee. So folks are taking the social distancing seriously, they're taking the COVID seriously. The General Assembly now passed a provision where a voter didn't have to specify a cause. You could just cite COVID-19 reasons as a reason for requesting your absentee ballot. That caught on with some folks because, again, those are pretty striking numbers.
Over 20,000 people voting absentee this year. If you're just hopping on, we're talking about different trends that have been happening today in the primary elections. I wanted to also talk about, Jamie Harrison versus Lindsey Graham now moving forward. Kind of, how are they going to stack up against each other, do you think?
That's going to be a really interesting race. Jamie Harrison is going to be well funded. He's going to be well organized. He comes basically under the shadow or the jacket of Congressman Clyburn. He spent time as an aide in Washington, knows the city very well, has some deep political connections, knows South Carolina well, and has a wonderful story. If you match that against a longtime incumbent in Lindsey Graham, if you look at even 6 years ago, Lindsey Graham probably ran against 12 different candidates, I think the number was, and still even managed to avoid a runoff. So he certainly has a strong base here in South Carolina. A lot of folks really like him, really support him. So we'll see how basically this plays out leading up until November.
Definitely. Now let's see what else I got here. We were talking about the increase in voter turnout. Now I know that coronavirus is an obvious factor. Is it not?
Absolutely.
I don't want to speak out of turn.
Probably the biggest one we're seeing right now.
Yeah. But what are some other things that you think could play into why people are so fired up to vote right now?
Well, certainly the social unrest that we've seen since the tragic killing of George Floyd, 2 weeks ago now. If you hear a lot of the calls to action that the leaders are charging people with, at the top of the list is vote. Get out and vote. Register to vote. Actually vote. And we're certainly seeing products of that today. I suspect that we're going to see an even bigger ramp up leading into November. The parties are well organized. Republicans have a clear mission. They want to see the re-election of Donald Trump. Democrats are going to be strongly behind Joe Biden. There's going to be a lot of energy leading up to November. There's going to be a lot of money leading up into November. And we're going to see some of that tension here with our Senate race and certainly with the first congressional race.
Absolutely. One thing that I was talking to a history professor the other day about was he was suspecting moving forward, a lot of politicians are going to be taking harder stances on certain issues in terms of, pretty much anything. But do you think that that's definitely something that could happen, and also why?
Well, certainly. We live in unprecedented political times. Social media alone, we're on a Facebook Live session right here, has changed the way that campaigns interact with voters. It has changed the way voters interact with voters, and it has changed the way voters interact with non-voters. We're seeing new folks being brought into the political fray. There's some that are casting ballots for the first time that have no idea what life was like without an iPhone in their hand. So again, things are changing rapidly. As far as stances are concerned, it's interesting. Politics and politicians, they're sort of like trees. They have a tendency to bend and shift whatever way the wind is blowing. Certainly we're seeing some very strong currents right now that's charging candidates to take very hard, firm stances. People are demanding that.
Yes.
What does that look like if we start looking out 8 years, 12 years, 16 years, who knows?
That was a good point. Okay, he's answering my questions so well, guys. All right, the last thing I want to talk about, Nancy Mace, moving forward with the race against Joe Cunningham. How do you think that's going to stack up?
It's going to be a huge race. The first congressional district, Republicans want that seat back very badly. Democrats want to hold on to that seat very badly. We are going to see an influx of dark money. Dark money simply just means you can't trace its roots.
Okay.
We're going to see an influx of dark money that's going to come in the first congressional district. We're going to see additional political action committees come in. We're going to see the campaigns ramp up. But you have to understand something. What's interesting about the transition that Nancy Mace is now making from a primary to a general, your voter universe changes. In a primary, you are largely trying to get out the base. Those are folks that are identified as Republicans or voting in a Republican primary, and they probably share very like principles, and they probably subscribe to a platform.
Okay.
That voter universe changes in a general. Generally what happens, what you'll see, is the parties now become responsible for turning out the base. Democrats will turn out Democrats, Republicans will turn out Republicans.
Okay.
Campaigns are now charged with turning out undecideds, independents, and even folks from the other parties. Messaging comes into play. Nancy Mace is a strong supporter of President Donald Trump.
Okay.
What does President Trump, in his either national appeal or national withdrawal he's got on some voters, how much does that actually weigh into voters in the first congressional district? So this is almost as much about President Donald Trump and how much she chooses to align her message to where she decides to distance herself from him and run more as an independent Republican.
That's an interesting point. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about? I know that we don't have a ton of time because he's got to go to our 10 o'clock show in just a half an hour. Is there anything else that you want to mention that kind of stuck out to you today?
Well, we've got a lot of, the entire General Assembly in South Carolina, all 170 seats, is up for re-election in November. We all get caught up, we like the sexy stuff. We like the presidential races, we like the congressional races. The folks that make law in Columbia, the folks that are on the county councils, which are also on the ballot this November, they have a much larger impact on our everyday lives than the folks in Washington do. So the biggest thing that I can encourage voters to look at, do your research on the candidate, understand the races from the top to the bottom, but most importantly, register to vote if you're not. Get out and vote if you haven't before, but bring a friend, bring a family member, try to get as many people involved in the civic process as possible.
You heard him, guys. Everyone go vote. Now I have to go and finish my Facebook Live now, so if you want to see John later tonight, he will be on our 10 o'clock show, so be sure to tune back in, and thank you so much for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.
Bye, guys.